thank you for working for amazing nonprofits, even though I don't know what all of you actually are working, what organizations you're working for at the moment, but I know that nonprofit work, especially right now, is particularly important. And while many things have changed, we're going to talk about that. Many things haven't changed. They've just changed their priority and what you can do with them. And we're going to talk about some of that. And I really want to reiterate what Emily said. Please send questions, ideas, things that come up from the items that I mentioned, because there's just a wealth of people here who already have tried and are trying things to make their nonprofits be sustainable through this time. And so we really look for that. And so while I think about things that have changed or not changed, we are still the kind of people who care about the missions of our agencies, and that is going to be important. And normal has changed, and we'll look for a new normal. Let's move to the second slide. So what has changed? Well, probably the thing you notice as a nonprofit, you know this personally, is we can't do in-person events or meetings. That doesn't mean we don't connect, but it does mean that the ways we may have done things in the past have had to be modified. I think about even today's meeting. I can't see all of you. You see the three of us. And I'm glad there are some faces here, because that's probably the thing I miss the most. Is I like being around people. I like connecting. That's something that gives me a lot of energy. Well, that's probably true for many of you, and I know that that's true for your board and your donors. They still want and need that, and we're going to have to figure out how we do that in a new way. For those orgs that do major fundraising events, especially here in this first part of the year, that's going to be a big adjustment. There's no question about that. And so I'm going to ask Emily to put out our first poll question. We're going to ask you to talk to us about the source of your contributions, because some of this is going to be more important to some of you, and a different kind of issue is going to be important. Mm-hmm. Oh, quite well. We are an interesting and well distributed group here. All of you need individual donor funding. Many of you, or most of you, also use other government, corporate grants, or program services monies. But all of you need personal donations. So that's going to be an important thing as we go forward. Now I would like to ask Emily to do our third poll question to everyone. Oh, wow. Well, that is significant. Thank you, Emily. So what that does, I mean, even with that question about have you had to change a major fundraising event, many of you have already figured out when you're going to reschedule those. What that does is get to our second point. We all make the most beautiful nonprofit timelines with how much funding we think we're going to get from every one of those amazing initiatives that we do. And right now, those have all had to be probably ripped up in some way. And that just makes me sad because we take, as nonprofit development professionals, we take this information from our years of experience and our years of experience with our current organization, and we know what works and what doesn't work, and we've now been flipped into a new normal. And I think particularly of folks whose year end is not December 31st. So if your year end is June 30th, this is going to put you in a particular and interesting situation, because how do you then go about, if you had a big event that's typically done in April or May, right before the end of your fiscal year, you're going to have to think of other and more creative ways to either make up that, change your funding, and that does very interesting things to your development plan. Especially since we all know that those development plans were beautiful and our board loved them and the executive director loved them and everyone was excited about what we were going to do. Well, it's time to relook at those and see how we might change things, especially because we're in such an uncertain time. Right now, we're not quite sure when we'll reopen. When can we put ourselves back into connection with our donors, our board, the people who have sustained your organization, sometimes for years. I think of one organization that I worked for that had been in existence for 70 some years. And I remember just meeting person after person who said, you were the place that my mother and now I use for the primary support that we need for our issue. And those people still care about what you're doing. It's how do we interact? How do we get them to not lose focus, because we don't know what new normal is going to be. And then there's the potential drop in revenue. That's going to be the next poll question that Emily's going to put up. I'd like to hear what you are anticipating, what you've already noticed about any changes in contributions, which is going to help you have an idea of what we're going to have to do going forward. Not seen significant yet, but you have seen a modest. They've just declined already. Go ahead and tell us what you have seen, what you think is coming. Especially, I realize those folks who have had to change major events, that's of particular concern. Good. Well, I'm happy for the 35% who haven't seen significant drops. That's great. A modest drop and significant decline means we've got 65% of the folks who are looking to say, we can't let this keep happening, especially because we know how important the work is. We need to continue to do the work that we need to get done. So thank you for filling that out.
Debbie, you know what's really interesting to me about that is that to me says, even though there's been some drops, that tells me how important those donors are and how much they do want to hear from you and what the connection is like, that they're still willing to support where some of them are in tough financial circumstances themselves.
Yes. Well, and that gets me to the donor resources. Are they changing or are they not changing? And for some of your donors, that is going to be significantly true. And for some donors, that's probably, they may very well not be very impacted because of the kind of work they do, the kind of wealth they have. They may see dips in some things, but they're not going to be worried about the amount of money that they normally give to nonprofits, and might even make a priority of increasing things where they know there's more need. And this gets to Melody's comment about the need to make sure that your donors know what you're doing right now and what you are going to continue to need going forward. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. The other thing that's changed is you're working from home. That's where all of us are at the moment, the three of us you see. You don't know if I'm wearing my PJs, do you? Or, well, I did have a shower, so we're okay there. But, you know, the cadence of what we do and what we're used to doing has shifted. And that has good and bad, probably, impacts to what you can and can't do now, which is really important to not, don't undervalue what that has done to your lives. I think about, I no longer have small people at home, but my children have small people at home, and they're both trying to do their jobs and make sure that the wee ones in their houses are well cared for. And so I know that they are, and some of you are probably switching when you do some of the work you do. Well, some of the things that we can now do, like call donors, is going to be even easier in the evening because your kids will go to bed. You didn't work in the morning. Your spouse or partner handled their work in the morning, and you're moving to the other parts of the day. There are advantages to this that we haven't probably done in the same way before. So I think PJs till noon is a fine idea, but if it also means that you can be flexible when you're working from home and shift how you do some things, that's a great idea. Let's move on to slide 3. What hasn't changed? Here's where I'm going to say, and somebody just sent a wonderful note about calling donors is so fun. I must say that one of the most fun things I remember, I started a new position where they hadn't ever had a development person before. Everyone was petrified of calling people. And I remember sitting in an office where 2 other staff were with me, and I was making some calls, and someone got off the phone and said, or I got off the phone and they said, "Oh my gosh, you seem like you're having a good time." I said, "Have you ever talked to our donors? They love us. And they understand the importance of the great and necessary work we're doing. And whatever your nonprofit does, there are people who love what you do, and they need to know about that even more now and in new ways that you have to communicate with them." The other thing that hasn't changed is you work with an amazing staff and board who are doing what they do with you and for the organization because they care so much about your mission. This has not changed. How we might use them has probably changed, and new opportunities have changed, but those are still true. And those faithful supporters are still there and want to hear from us. That none of that has changed. That is still a significant part of what we do. This is where that creative and nimble comes in. We are, your supporters think you're great. They need to know that, and they need to know about the stories and the ways in which you can communicate for them. You're not going to see them in person.
Debbie, there's a great response to what you're saying in the chat. This week, the donors I've called were ready to give gifts without me even asking. The other thing I was soliciting from our participants is the cost. A number of them have incurred costs for those canceled events, not just the reduction in revenue. So those are important things to let donors know, because they may not even think about that. And you have to cover those.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially about events. Even if you can reschedule them, you may already have had to eat cost with the change of an event. But the other thing I want to reiterate here, what hasn't changed is you also need to make sure you're taking care of yourself in order to do your work. Just because times are scary, unknown, we don't know how this is going to roll out, it is really, really important to do exactly what Emily's doing, drinking her favorite warm drink in the morning. This is good. And don't feel bad about this. I think it's very easy for people who work in nonprofits and who work for amazing organizations to say, I have to keep doing this. I have to keep doing this. I can't think about what I need. And that doesn't help us in the long run. So I would say, take good care of yourself. Let's move on to slide 4. I don't know if you can see this. My 3 people are over the lady with her pants on. When I talk about care, I'm talking about your care and your donors' care. Are your donors doing well? I mean, I know people, I really appreciate the comment that the person made about, I've called all these donors who I haven't even asked for a gift, and they are saying, how can I send this? Or how much do you need? Your donors need to be checked in on, and not just to ask them for funding, just to make sure that they know you're aware of them. Your mission is probably adjusting in some way. Some of you are spending way more time on direct service or direct care or new needs of care that you hadn't anticipated because of what COVID-19 has done. This is where the being nimble, I think we're the most nimble people in the world besides a ballerina maybe, and we always have to be. So be ready to say, this isn't going to be what the old normal. We're going to adjust to make sure we're still doing the overall mission, but the way we do that may have to be different. And then make sure you're taking showers and occasionally wearing pants. Probably a good.
Debbie, I really like what you're emphasizing there about self-care, because for a lot of our nonprofits, we're dealing with at-risk populations or people who are really experiencing extreme anxiety during this time. And we can't be that resource, you're saying, if we're not taking care of ourselves. And what a great model we are if we are taking care of ourselves and are positive in contacting them.
Yes, yes. So I know that there are people who think about development people as just money grubbers. No, if you've worked in a nonprofit long enough, you know that the donors who have been with you, who came to you because of a family issue or something, that they were so excited to hear about what your nonprofit does or how you've helped the community. They are as excited to hear from you and hear about what's going on as anyone you can imagine, but you do have to take care of yourself. Let's see. So I was just going to say, one of the self-care and donor care is you don't have to spend as much money on expensive pants anymore. You can wear your sweats. So you might be saving a little bit of money there. Until
you also don't have
later
the big
summer
lunch bills.
Pardon?
You also don't have the big lunch bills taking
No.
away.
No. How many lattes? Actually, the lattes are going to come in later.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next slide. Well, here is where I know as a development director, and when we're running events, we're doing advocacy issues, we're working with the board, I have a list of people I'm supposed to call this week, this month, new people to connect with, I never felt like I had enough time. One of the things I think that is an absolute delight about this time is making those donor calls, emails, notes, all of those things that I've been meaning to have enough time to do has now become a higher priority because it's actually one of the things you can do. So a general point here that I would say, there are people who are hurting financially, people who have donated to us for years, who are more concerned about their finances than they have been. But there are a whole group of people who are probably not impacted in their finances and their giving ability just because of the kind of wealth that they have. And this is a perfect opportunity to do some of that cultivating and moving those people to understand why their gifts and how their ability to give right now is so important. Melody, were you going to say something?
Yeah, that donor interaction. Somebody was saying it's hard to do when you're short-staffed, and I totally get that because some of you have already had to furlough staff, or you're really cut back to bare bones, and I understand that. But as to Debbie's point, I think it's going to bring you increased enthusiasm and energy and joy if you reach out, and it doesn't have to be all reaching out one-on-one. There's ways to reach out that are encouraging to a group. I can tell you just as a quick personal one here, one of the nonprofits I work with, I got an email that was all about asking how we are and suggestions for taking care of ourselves or encouraging us as donors, had nothing to do with asking for money. And it was as a mass email, and it was still effective.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Well, this also, I think, lends itself to the idea of what am I doing with those calls, emails, and notes that I didn't have as much time for. What Melody just said is exactly what we often don't have enough time for. And it might be just taking one of those donors who, I think of this donor, one of my favorite stories, someone who gave us $100 a year. And she's the sort of, I mean, for many, many years, it never increased other than the first 2 years, it was 25, then 50, then she went to 100. We knew she was older and retired, and she gave us $100. She's exactly the sort of person I want to be able to send a little note saying, your faithfulness over these last years has allowed us to get where we are right now and give us hope as we go through this time. She's also one of my favorite stories because she didn't come through as a very large or, you know, major donor in that she had a lot of giving capacity. What we didn't know until she died was that she and her husband, who had both worked all their lives, she had been a widow for a long time. After she died, we found out that we were half of her estate gift of $250,000. Because they never had children. They were very frugal. She didn't show up as a big income person. And I think about someone like that who you have no idea who is in your database quite like that, who needs those, I am so grateful for you notes. So even if you can only do however many notes you can do or calls, that's important. And this is also where, because I've certainly worked with boards who say, we hired you to be the development person. I don't like calling people, but they love writing notes like that from, you know, board member Tony or Janet. When I give them the history of someone like this woman, and they are happy to do that. So put everyone to work that you can put to work. And then I think about the writing of letters and notes, but also the storytelling that we can still do, and some of the new storytelling that we need to do right now that is particularly important based on what's happening with our mission. And here's an opportunity, I think, where, and I'll get to this a little bit later as well, new service opportunities. When I'm thinking about small donors who I'm calling, and I had this said to me because I like a latte, and I give myself so many lattes. I get to go to my favorite coffee shop every week and get, and I can't go there now, although I will confess I've ordered their 5 pounds of coffee because they're not open for business. Is for people like that to sort of break it down. I am not doing those 2 lattes, and I'm not doing them for a whole month or a week or 2 weeks or 3. I have funding that I didn't have before, and I'm really, really excited about doing the latte donation fund drive. You know, I just think about the ways in which people can consider, I don't have a lot of money, but I actually am saving money because I'm not buying those new dress slacks or that new dress, or I'm not buying lattes out anymore. So even small amounts go a long way.
My daughter and I were just talking about exactly what you're saying, Debbie, the other day, because we're not doing the out to eat lunches when we're working. We don't have the gas. There's a number of things we're saving on. And we were brainstorming as the 2 of us on how we use those resources to benefit others.
Right, exactly. And if you're the person who says that, so I think about, I have a lot of neighbors and friends who I'm connected with in social media. A number of them have put those sorts of things out even now for their favorite nonprofit, or as an idea to give, not necessarily to a particular, but as an idea to say, if you're saving money on gas, how much, and might you consider it to your favorite charity? So, you know, that's the sort of thing even your board members could do if they feel like they would like to. But it's a lovely way to use social media to do. The other thing I would say here is some of you are dealing with groups of people who are particularly hard hit right here. You don't have to make up stories. You don't have to talk about my latte. You know that there is an immediate need and how important it is to get that word out there. So say those stories, put those stories out there. Anything that's shifted or changed because of what's going on right now and how your organization can help that, and how a small gift of my latte fund to your nonprofit could make the difference for that person's meal. So that's a great idea. New service opportunities. Here's the other thing I have noticed. I have noticed nonprofits that have started working more collaboratively because there are needs that no one of them can now do separately. So by all means, take those as an opportunity to say, right now we're focusing on making sure that the immediate needs that we can help with and this other organization can help with. So don't shy away from that. I know sometimes there's what I would call odd turf issues over nonprofits. And we do have other organizations that sort of align with some of what we do, but this is a great time to say we're bigger than that. And the mission and making sure the people who need the assistance is happening, we can do that. We are those kind of people. So teaming with other nonprofits and not being afraid to do that.
Debbie, I really like that point about teaming. The other thing that came to mind as you were sharing that is some of you have had to furlough staff or cut back. And here's a perfect opportunity then to leverage the resources that are there and share those things as you build a relationship with another organization.
Yeah, that is really pertinent. The other thing I would say, right, another thing I think of here is, I need to make sure I'm on the right slide here. If you are an advocacy organization, and most of the nonprofits I have worked with have been advocates for their population or at the statewide level, guess what? Legislation is happening right now that impacts your constituents. Some of it good, some of it not very good. And it is the absolute perfect time to engage your supporters, because guess what? They're home just like we are. When else have they had the opportunity to contact their senators or legislators or their governors or their representatives to make sure that they understand what you're watching them do? And it's just, I mean, this is not about funding. This is about how do you make sure that those things that in sometimes, even right now when we're all focused on the COVID-19, other slyer things are being added to legislation that are of great concern to our constituents. They depend on us to make sure they know about that and know how they can advocate for that. And so don't be afraid of doing that.
May I interject here with a few ideas that were shared?
Yeah.
These nonprofits, you always encourage me as well because you're very creative and you've got great things. One of the attendees said they're thanking their donors by name in newsletters and during online events. Great, recognize them.
Great.
Another said they're challenging their residents of teen girls to make cards to encourage other teens in foster care. So that's collaborating and reaching out again. And then the last one here is they sent out an email blast with information about how the organization was continuing to remain in operations. One response from a donor was to call and ask about what they could do to help, and they received a check afterwards for $2,000.
Oh. All right.
Those are such encouraging stories.
Just lovely. The other thing I will say, as I had mentioned, I'm connected with many other people who do nonprofit work, neighbors, former colleagues, current colleagues, one of whom sent via Facebook, two different friends, a neighbor and one is a former nonprofit colleague of mine, about a very immediate need that had ratcheted up so high that the organization that met this need had run out of the supplies they needed by the end of March that should have taken them well into the fall. And so they just sent out a plea. So we sent a donation. And I think it wasn't 5 days. I got a handwritten note, a thank you, immediate from the executive director. Same thing happened with a donation we sent via online to an organization we normally send to, but I know that because of this, and that they have, this is an arts organization that cannot start their season, we doubled our gift that we typically send because I know they're gonna be in a lot of trouble. I don't think it had come into her email, and I got an email back, and I will point out she used both my name and my husband's name correctly. Also doesn't often happen. And just said, you're gonna get your formal handwritten, but I just wanted you to know how encouraging this was to us. That's the sort of thing we can do right now. We don't have to wait for that. I assume most of you can keep track of what's coming in. And that was an online donation, so those were both easy for them to find, but don't wait, do that. It's encouraging to me as a donor, and I know that those needs were made known to me, so I knew what I needed to do and that I had access to do this. You have people in your sphere for whom that's true too. Let's see, joining forces. Let's go to the next slide. Creative fundraising in a pandemic. And you all have already tried. I'm starting here with the things I've seen, I already know about. And I'm gonna start with the unbaked sale or a virtual event. When our children were small and in elementary school, we were all very busy parents. And every spring, there was a family that took it upon themselves to do the unbaked sale every spring. They got donated tea bags. They hand wrote or sent home with every child a letter saying, "You're all busy. I know you love to bake. I know you have no time. I know you don't need to eat the extra calories. So we're going to host the unbake sale. I want you to sit back, steep your tea. While you enjoy that, think about how much time you would have spent baking that with the ingredients. And when you're about halfway done with your tea or coffee, just write out a check and send it to the PTO, and we'll never ask you to do a spring bake sale again." And I thought, what a great thing. Of course, we loved that family. They kept doing it long after that family was gone. But we're in the unbake sale kind of fundraising time where we can think of creative ways to replace an event. Or let's go to the next slide just to look at this. Right after I did this, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't come out very well. I received from an organization that I have known for a long time this celebration. They do literacy superhero event every year at this time. And they raise a lot of funds to do it. And they decided, we're not stopping this. We have our superheroes and we're going to highlight them and we're going to raise money for us and we're going to do it virtually. Have they ever done this before? No, they have never done this before. Are they going to do it this way? Yes, because they said it is important for people to know who has made a big difference to the literate health of our state. And we're going to highlight those superheroes. And guess what? We're all at home. I can sit down and watch this event and watch them highlight these amazing people and what has gone on with them in this last year as a result of this organization. Let's go back to the other slide, the previous slide. So these are just ideas. I mean, within the last week, the things I have seen that people have done as a way to stay engaged. And I think about even what Melody mentioned earlier, especially for people who have put down money or lost money on an event. Most of those are done with donor, like sponsors from individuals, or like that previous slide that we just looked at, there were underwriters, people who are big sponsors of these events. Well, we can still give them the same kind of online publicity for their support of our organization. And guess what? People are on their screens more now than they were before. So for sponsors, this is like a win-win situation for them. So don't be afraid of asking your regular sponsors to keep sponsoring. It's just they don't have to put on a suit and tie. They get to just give us their logo and we get to celebrate them as big supporters of this very important work.
That's
Melody?
awesome. One of the things I was thinking of as you were sharing that is I'm not great on social media. It's outside of my generational aptitude. But if you have employees that you maybe have been blessed with PPP funding or other funding that you can keep them paid, but you don't have a lot of work for them to do depending on your organization, tap into them and get them going on social media.
Perfect. That's perfect. That's really also that sort of nimble, be creative. How do we reuse who we have here?
Yep.
That's a great idea, Melody. That's a great idea. So there are lots of ways to consider how do we replace our event with something that still raises very necessary funding, that people want to have their name on, and that continue to support the mission so that we keep doing what we do. The other thing I just, in a recent newsletter, an organization that I am involved with encouraged people to consider in-memory gift as a particular way of saying, we would like to highlight that person you would like us to remember because it's someone that is important to you, and highlight how our ability to help them in the past and a memory gift with their name on it will make sure that we make it through this time to help those people like your mother or your daughter in the future who are going to continue to need our need. And I just thought it was a lovely way of celebrating those people who know and love you and have been connected to you, and give them a way to highlight someone that they care greatly about. And you get to highlight that, and and their support gets you through a time that is, we have no idea exactly what all of the financial hit would be, but it's a great way to do that. So I was really, I just really loved it. And this is an organization that gets a lot of in-memory gifts, and they just really used that idea well as a way to do that right now. We want to list all those people and use that fund that is coming from that to really get us through this very uncertain time, so that we are here next for the next person that needs us going forward. The other thing I put in here, stimulus gifts. Your big donors aren't getting stimulus gifts, don't worry about that. But I was listening to NPR, and they were interviewing people who had gotten their individual stimulus gifts. Two of the families needed them greatly. One person they talked to said, both my partner and I are doing okay. We're not really losing income. It was lovely to get these gifts, but I'm using mine, and I'm going to split it 3 ways to the 3 charities who I know are in more need for their services right now. And I just need to give this money somewhere else. And he even kind of laughed and said, maybe I'll regret this because there's maybe something coming, I don't know. But right now, this is what I feel like I need to do. And I just thought, what a lovely story of how generous people are because they know and care about what you're doing as a nonprofit and how important it is.
I love that story. And I can just tell you from anecdotally from a few of the organizations I work with and the things I've seen, especially the younger generation is saying, I want to take that relief. I don't need it myself. Somebody needs it more than I do. And what a great way of understanding the heart behind our nonprofits and what so much is being communicated about during this pandemic, that we have to care for one another and come together and be a community. So I love that.
Yeah, it was, I just almost cried in the kitchen as I was listening to this story, thinking, oh my gosh, we all know those kind of donors, and they are in our database, or they want to hear about what your nonprofit is doing that is so important right now. And then I also was very touched in our own community of Madison, Wisconsin, of 2 different organizations who are teaming up because of really serious pandemic relief needs. And our local Boys and Girls Club and United Way teamed up to raise money to give grants out on top of the other thing. And the thing I loved about it wasn't any one particular organization that was trying to raise it for themselves. They were raising it so that it could be given out to those people who need it more than they do. And it's just a lovely way. This goes back to that earlier comment about teaming up as nonprofits, because this is not a turf issue. This is a need issue. And you have status and recognition in a way that can help do something like that. That is just a great opportunity right now. I also know that another nonprofit I work with has someone who has said, we'll give a matching gift if you would like to use it right now. It's a major donor who wants to give a major gift as a way to, during this time when some of the other things you would do, you may not be able to do. and use a matching gift opportunity right now. Great way to use one of your more major gift donors and help people who have only an extra 25 or my latte money. This would be the perfect place in a matching gift fund to say, we've got $10,000, donate your latte money, donate your lunch money, donate those new slacks you don't have to buy, and just be creative with getting people to say, my little bit will get us to that goal of matching, and we will make it really possible for the end of the year to not have such a hit for a nonprofit I care greatly about. And so be creative with the matching gift, or be creative with that kind of wording, because it hits close to home, and I would be such a sucker for that. So you can just go ahead and send that to me, because I'll send you all my latte. This is where, let's take a look at our fourth question about what are things you've already tried that we might put into this creative fundraising. And I will say some of these examples I gave you are things that I just saw in the last 2 weeks. So there are amazing nonprofit creative thinkers like you out there doing this. I am a firm believer in stealing a good idea, so don't feel bad about that. If this worked for another nonprofit that's similar, or you can take that idea and kind of tweak it with your imagery and you know, something like that fits for you, by all means, use that. What were you going to say, Melanie?
I love that, because every nonprofit has its own kind of DNA or personality, and you can share the idea and tweak it to your DNA.
Oh.
So the memory gift is going to be a much more applicable idea, where somebody else, it might be reaching, you know, families with the unbaked sale instead.
Mm-hmm. I even thought about using the unbaked sale for, and I know that many environmental groups have done similar things like this, but sending a little seed packet and say, help us with seed money to get us through to the end of the year, or, you know, take the unbaked sale in the tea bag and do whatever. The other thing I would say here, someone asked me about, should we go ahead and do our normal annual report right now? Oh my goodness, yes. What do I love is reading amazingly good stories about what you've done in the last year. And don't be afraid about addressing what we're currently sitting in your director's letter or your board of directors, you know, front letter to this, or even put in a letter giving people ideas of where you're worried that this coming year, you're going to be concerned about some things that you're going to not have enough funding for. It is absolutely the perfect time for people to feel excited about what you have done in the past with this organization, how your financial support has allowed them to do what they did last year, and how you do not want them not to be able to continue to do that in this next year.
That's awesome. I just want to share a few of the things that have been coming in response. Somebody shared that their donor board member has sent gift cards to all the staff, pizza gift cards.
Oh.
And I love all the people that are doing the gift cards for restaurants, because it's accomplishing two things. It's helping local small businesses, as well as encouraging those who are putting in the tough times. Another one is shared a quote on the stimulus gifts. It's not really my money, it's our money. So great idea. How can I better use that money then? Another one had online auctions, and with a matching campaign related to the online.
Oh, great idea.
Doing weekly Zoom community check-ins to hear and see from other members. I'm going to add to that one. This is my ad, not what was in the chat, but my daughter was telling me one of the ways they got a sponsor or a donor to come in with some money was to do something fun. So in their weekly community Zoom meeting, they got to kind of bomb in with a llama and a funny message from this donor. And it was just a way to, again, have that levity, that human relationship, as well as raise some money. So like for, you know, $100, you can bomb our meeting too with your silly message or whatever kind of idea. Another one is sending out newsletters with specific requests like toilet paper, cleaning supplies, etc., because they're a group home. Getting on the phone like you suggested earlier, for sure. I have to read this one because I'm not fully getting that one. I know this is one that my daughter has a passion for with outside environment organizations struggling right now because of spring events. And so they're pivoting from outdoor events to pitch together videos from the different locations they were going to hike in.
Oh.
These are all great ideas. You guys are so creative.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Especially because what can we do right now and what can't we do? But what can we leverage with the things we can do that make this creative, fun, engaging? I didn't really say this, but one of the things while I'm home and I have the opportunity to be online, what I cannot handle is too much news. I would much rather see, I think someone said, the photos from your outside your window. Right now you could see the construction guys that are redoing my street and sewer lines. But it makes everyone feel like we're in this together. And any way you can do that as caring for your donors and letting them know that we'll make it through this, we can be creative. The world is still a beautiful place. Actually, in some ways, it just got healthier to breathe and easier to for animals because we're not out there. I mean, there are amazing backsides to anything. Your ideas are just great.
Here's the other one that I had to read through. They are hosting a number of virtual events, but I love this last one in particular. They're having a photo competition. Again, what a great way to add to your Instagram or your Facebook or social media and having that photo competition.
Yeah, yeah. That's just, and the other thing I want to say here is make sure you remember that you have lots of people, just like this group of people from all over the state and the country right now that are listening, putting in comments. You have a community of people who is doing this just like you are. And we all want all of us to keep doing the important nonprofit work we are doing, to make sure that the issues that and the people that we are caring for continue to be cared for. And it's for some of you that has just gotten even more crucial and more necessary. And yay, wonderful. I will raise a glass to you tonight. And I think that's just a thing we have to remember. This is really part of the self-care that I really hope you all remember. You do amazing work connecting people who care greatly about the same things you do, which is why you work where you do. We never have enough, but we just got a whole lot of enthusiasm and a lot of great ideas from each other here. Let's go to the last slide. This is where I would say be kind to yourself. You personally are not responsible to make sure that everything comes out the same way. There is a whole team of people, some of whom you don't even know until you start making those calls, who want to help support you in that, which is one of the most wonderful things I think about calling supporters and board members. But be kind to your donors, make sure they know that you're there with them. Call, write, check in, email. That's what we have time for, and that's great at the moment. That's true for your board too, who's probably worried in another way than you are about this. Their name and their reputation is also on this organization. They want to make sure that everything is healthy going forward, but they didn't ever sign up to be development people. So help them know what they can do that is so appreciated. Those notes, those thank yous, all of those. I'd say make sure you drink your favorite beverage, and if that's 2% milk, great. If it's good coffee, if you need something stronger, by all means. I will confess that that is one of the things we made sure that our house was well supplied with before we left, so you can order all those things. And then think creatively. Somewhere here, this is going to shift. And we're going to pack new and probably different things into the fall and winter than we thought we were going to do. Well, here's a great time to both watch what other people are doing and how they're handling this, and unabashedly use those things that work for your organization, and think about things you might try and do differently because the situation has changed for you by this fall. And I would encourage you to get dressed, but you know, maybe not till morning.
I love all those ideas you've shared. As you were saying now, another thought came to mind that, you know, you have some donors out there that have very little to do right now. And engage them in helping you say some of the thank yous or doing some of the social media posts or other things. There's no reason it has to be just staff. Donors are willing to pitch in on this stuff too.
Yeah, well, that one donation I told you about was my neighbor and my other friend through a nonprofit who both reposted what this nonprofit sent. I'm not on that alert.
Yep.
I was so grateful that they did that. It was great.
Thank you so much, Debbie. We so appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. This has been incredible. And the other thing I think that we've seen in this is reach out. Like Debbie said earlier, collaborate with other nonprofits, with each other. Because even as we were talking today, some of the stuff that I shared came off the generation of the discussion and things that came to mind. So just having those conversations can get you recharged and create new ideas.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you both so much for your contributions, and everybody else on the call. We so appreciate your time. We did have a couple of questions come in through the Q&A, which we will reach out afterwards
Okay.
with you on those. So ladies, anything else to add?
I think we're good.
All right, awesome. Well, continue to reach out if you have any questions. We have some more awesome webinars coming up next week, so make sure to visit our website to view those. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.